floor low, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
And we all bow our heads. Dear Father, we thank you right now at this moment for giving us another breath and another chance at life to do the right thing. Lord, we ask that you come into the midst of this meeting, work with us and through us, and guide us that we make the right decisions for our city. We also ask that you put your arms around our administration and also the citizens of this city and bless us. And Lord, we thank you for everything that you have given us thus far. In your Son, Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Gordon?
Here.
Mr. McLean?
Here.
Mr. Lowe?
Here.
Mr. Tevin?
Here.
Miss Adams?
Here.
Mr. Glenn?
Here.
Mrs. Miles? Here. And Mr. Nixon?
Here. Under privilege of the floor this evening, we have Jesse Lowe Sr. regarding potholes. If you could please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and I'll remind you that our rules allow for 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. My name is Jesse James Lowe Sr. I lived in Lima, Ohio all my life, 64 years. And I'm here because of the potholes that I had an accident here in Lima, Ohio. The accident occurred March the 25th, 2014. It happened on the corner of Hurley and Union Street, South Union. On the 26th, I talked to a couple council people and took the proper steps in order to get this solved. I reported it to one of the city buildings on High Street. I think the young man, Mr. Tony Geisler, I think him is in charge of it. But anyway, I went over there and I filled out all the paperwork I was supposed to fill out. I done everything I was supposed to do. I took pictures of the rim that was messed up. I took pictures of the pothole. I filled out the information forms. I turned it over to my insurance company. I got the estimate for the damage. I turned that over to them. I gave them everything I was supposed to do. I gave it to them. Then I was denied, okay? I was denied, and I was told if they would have knew about this pothole a few days and before my accident, and if they wouldn't have fixed it, then they would have paid for my rim on my Ford F-150. Okay, after that, I appealed it through my councilman, who took over, and I waited and waited, and I still haven't got any results. My insurance company took care of it. They paid for the rim. I got it on my truck. I had to pay a $250 deductible. The rim cost approximately $800 because they paid $500 and something, and I paid $250. Okay, I'm still waiting on the appeal, and I don't know what's going on. Now, this happened in March. Now it's October. So it's been like 7 months. So my question to the city is, why can I get compensated for my rims? And I thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you. We will ask the administration and the law department to get back with you on the status of that claim and also report to us. Thank you. The consent calendar.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that item A of the consent calendar be received, filed, and approved, and items B and C be received and filed.
The motion and the second is to receive, file, and approve item A and to receive and file items B and C. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 1.
From the Finance Director regarding legislation for budget amendments.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 1 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 1. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 2.
From the Finance Director regarding legislation for the purchase of Exchange server and licensing.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 2 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 2. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 3.
From the Director of Public Works regarding legislation to grant an easement to AEP.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that communication number 3 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 3. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 4.
From the Director of Public Works requesting legislation to enter into contract with Veterans Memorial Civic and Convention Center for parking garage management services.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that communication number 4 be received and filed, and that the law director be authorized to prepare the necessary legislation to comply with the request.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 4 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 5.
From Judge Workman requesting legislation to make purchases from special projects and computer funds.
Mr. President,
Ms. Miles.
I move that communication number 5 be received and filed, and I believe there's necessary legislation needs to be prepared.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 5 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 6.
From the Director of Utilities requesting legislation to renew an agreement with GE Intelligent Platforms.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that communication number 6 be received and filed and authorize the law director to prepare any necessary legislation.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 6 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 7.
From Major Baker regarding the liquor permit renewal.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon.
I move that communication number 7 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 7. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
we've asked the police department and their administration to get us some pretty good record keeping, and you've supplied this document to us. And I want to thank you for it because it does keep us informed every year, and this is what we've been asking for a while, so I do appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 8.
From Chief Martin regarding legislation to accept the COPS hiring grant.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon.
I move that communication number 8 be received and filed and legislations on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 8. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 9.
From the Director of Community Development regarding legislation to place tax assessments.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn.
I move that communication number 9 received and filed.
We need legislation authorized.
You do?
Yeah.
Seen it?
No, names authorized.
Oh,
The motion and the second is to receive and, was there a second?
no.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 9. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 10.
From the Director of Community Development regarding legislation to place tax assessments for specified parcels.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn.
I move that communication number 10 received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 10. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I'd like to ask Ms. Odom on the mowing for this year, where we stand in the process. Thank you.
Mr. President, council members, regarding the specified parcel program, which is cutting the vacant, up to 600 vacant lots in the city of Lima, we have one more round of cutting. They anticipate starting, I believe I spoke with inspectors today, probably next week. We hope the frost beats us to it, but if not, there will be one more mowing. We want to encourage all persons in Lima to continue their mowing their lawns, because if it gets long, it's harder to cut it in the spring. So we appreciate your compliance. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 11.
From the Deputy Director of Public Works requesting legislation to enter into a contract for bulk fuel purchases.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that the communication number 11 be received and filed, and the law director be authorized to prepare the necessary legislation to comply with the request.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 11 and authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 12.
From Chief Hefner regarding legislation to enter into a contract with Armor Fire Protection, Inc.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon?
I move that communication number 12 be received and filed, and legislation's on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 12. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 13.
From Chief Hefner regarding legislation to enter into a contract with Alice Door and Window.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon?
I move that communication number 13 be received and filed, and legislation's on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 13. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 14.
From Chief Hefner regarding legislation to enter into a contract with Warren Fire Equipment.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon?
I move that communication number 14 be received and filed, and legislation's on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 14. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Reports of officials. Officer Bob Hamill regarding junk auto update.
Oh, my Lord. I thought you had books. Yeah.
I was going to say, no, we're not.
I'm property investigator Bob Hamill for the City of Lima. For most of you know me from working security here. I retired from Lima Police Department as a 35-year patrolman last year, and I am a part-time property investigator doing junk vehicles. And just as a reference point, it shows there's 700 some investigations been done this year by myself. I just want to give a little bit of this is how many I've done. This is what I've done so far this year. You can see the numbers on the paper, and it kind of puts it in perspective.
That's half my work, probably.
And the other half.
You got another?
I've been fortunate, I think, being a police officer and when I took over this job, because I like to talk to people.
Yep.
I've always been a people person, and I think that my interpretation of the requirements of the job are to get compliance. That's the bottom line, compliance. Now, whether that means towing vehicles or whatever it takes, I believe towing is the last resort. I'm very fortunate where I can give warning tags first, contact people, or they'll contact me, and then we can set up dialogue. A lot of people, and I was ignorant. I tell people when I worked up the street, if you have a car with expired tag parked in front of your house on the street, pull your driveway, because if it's on the street, it'd be mine. You can't have a unlicensed vehicle. Now, once I started this job, I realized that you can have an unlicensed vehicle anywhere in the city. In other words, as I explained to them, I said, you better be able to get in your car, start it up, back out of the driveway, and drive down the street, and not let Randy Coley get you, or Officer Now get you now. And a lot of people don't understand that. They say, well, this is my property. I can park my car anywhere I want. So, well, unfortunately, it's a matter of quality of life issues. That's why I try to explain to people. I said, the ordinances are here for a reason. people who live next door to you don't want to see a car parked with sunk to the frame, with a tree growing out of the engine compartment, all four tires flat, no roof, whatever.
Right.
And so it's a matter of getting compliance, and I've been fortunate where I feel that through my training, I can get people to comply. I've only towed 20 cars this year. And I feel that, and most people, when I talk to them, they're very appreciative of me talking to them, and they want to move the vehicle, they comply. And I will stand for questions and things, but I guess I didn't realize I'd done that many also. It kind of surprised me when they started running numbers. And most of the people in Lima are great people, they want to comply, you know, and I feel that the 20 I towed probably were favors on my part to get through to them what I want them to do. I will stand for any questions you may have.
Mr. President?
Mr. Devon?
Officer Hamel, I really appreciate this report. I asked for it. This was an issue that I took to committee to put somebody in your position, and you are the perfect person for it. I saw the interview on TV, but more importantly, and they did a very nice job showing how you handle these cases, but more importantly, we're seeing the difference in the city. You know, I can, in my ward, there are numerous lots where there used to be junk autos, and they are no longer. So I appreciate it. In my mind, it's a process that is working very well, and you're a big reason for that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Bonas?
Officer Hamel, being new to this report here, could you kind of walk me through the 51 junk autos? What does that mean? I mean, what happened with that is just, I mean, tell me a little bit about these numbers here.
Okay.
Like the 51 junk autos, what did you do? Did you just identify them, or?
We have different junk autos, the different classifications. Most of the things I deal with are parking violations. Under the city ordinance, there's a section for junk autos like no tires, no motor, that type of thing. Also, there's a section for expired tags, for cars sitting on flats that haven't been run in months or years. So that's the differentiation between the two. You'll see that most of the parking motor vehicles is the number one complaint I deal with. That's people, like I said, have cars in their backyard that are in violation. The car may be incomplete, but it's not running, there's no tags on, stuff like that.
Okay.
And I have my brother-in-law works for one of our scrap yards here. He thanked me a bunch because he said once I started the job and once the word got out, their business increased a bunch with junk cars. So people are understanding it, but I feel that I have a lot to do yet in terms of getting compliance. Had a guy from Oklahoma, he parked in his front yard, which there again, that'd be parking violation, not a junk auto violation. I wrote him a warning tag. He said, "What's this?" He said, "Well, I'm from, we're allowed to park in my yard." Well, I said, "Here in Lima, Ohio, you're not allowed to, it's in violation." So I think it's education, the big thing.
Right.
And I'm fortunate because I was off January, February, March. I get laid off in January, February, March, which is perfect, which I don't want to work January, February, March. Thank you. I'm allergic to snow and cold. But and I go in the neighborhood, I might get a complaint, and I go in the neighborhood. Once I'm in the neighborhood, then I start looking around and looking at, and I've cherry-picked the easy ones now. I think it's starting to get a little harder now because most of the ones that are parked in lots and out in the middle, in front of God and everybody are gone now. So I've started now in doing different wards, patrolling alleys, and, you know, driving down the street real slow, checking backyards and things to see what's going on.
So the vehicles with junk is just that, vehicles with junk in it, but they,
Correct. Like pickup truck, trailers. You can believe how many trailers we deal with. That's a trailer's another thing. Boat trailer. It has to be properly licensed to be stored in your backyard. It's utility trailer with junk in them. You can't have that. The ordinance says you have to have the trailer emptied and it has to be properly licensed. Which, like I said, I was unaware. I plead ignorance on that myself. And the city of Lima, you know, and once I've notified people, they're very great and gracious, taking care of what they need to be taken care of.
Mr. President.
Mr. Lowe?
Thank you. I also appreciate this. My question to you is, how long does it take from the time something is reported to code enforcement to the time it gets to you?
Usually, our secretary gets them and she usually puts them in my inbox pretty quick.
Okay, I'm saying this for public, because and I'm gonna be specific, and I'm gonna say the name, Right Way Dealership. It's on State Route 81 and Jefferson Street.
Okay?
The first 4 cars in his lot are on rims. They have been on rims forever, to the point that the bumper's on the sidewalk. Okay? I have dealt with him over and over and over. What tools do you have that allows you to step into a dealership arena?
That's a whole different ballgame what I'm dealing with, because I deal with the private
Resident.
property and stuff like that. Auto dealers are licensed, as long as he's a licensed dealership, he can have cars with no tags on them in different states of repair while they're working on them and stuff like that. I'd have to do a little more research on him, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I'm gonna ask you to get back with me on that, because
Okay.
I get the same complaints from the same neighbors on that block, and it's horrible. And there's businesses across the street trying to do the right thing.
Right.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah, matter of fact, he's got a second lot up here at Main and McKibben also.
Okay.
Yes, I know who you're talking about, and I'll do some more checking on it, but the businesses and things, you know, since that's their livelihood, and the ordinances pretty much deal with residential and commercial in terms of non-auto repair shops, auto dealers and stuff like that. There are certain sets of
Okay.
things they fall under also.
And that's understood. I guess, and not to prolong this, but my issue is, how long is that car sitting there for maintenance? Like, some of the cars been there over a year. I can go through an alley between Main and North Union Street, and they're supposed to be repairing cars. But the whole alley, there's about 25, 30 cars back there that have been sitting there literally for the 4 years I've been on council. So, I mean, that's
Right.
what I'm saying.
And we're working on a situation now with a local car repair place. And I did a little bit of just a survey, a couple of the car repair places and the body shops. They're saying that it takes sometimes up to 4 or 5 months sometimes to get insurance claims and get parts and stuff depending on what the vehicle is. And I know some of these smaller shops, they don't charge the shop hours like your big commercial, like the GMCs and the Shift Forwards and stuff like that, to where they get people who are of lower income. They'll do repair on the cars, and the people don't pay them. And the guy says, well, I'm not gonna give a car to this guy when I got all my labor and my parts on this car. And that happens quite a bit, especially these smaller shops, because they get a lot of the people who can't afford to take them to the big shops. So that's we run into quite a bit of that. Now, in terms of Right Way, the auto lot up there, I'll see what I can do. I'll talk with Amy and get the ordinance out and read them over real close. But like 99% of my stuff I deal with the public in terms of housing, residential areas, stuff like that.
Thank you.
Mr. President? Thank you. Hold on. Mr. Glenn,
Yeah.
do you have something to say? Because I thought you did, and you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
say
I was
anything.
waiting,
I'm sorry.
running down home. I won't be here a few minutes, but I'd like to thank you. You're doing a fantastic job in using good communication skills, because people come back and tell me. You know, they say, you know, and as you've been a police officer, like Tom said, you kept that pressure there, you know, letting them know, and we appreciate what you did on Oak Street. But that was a relief off of me. Oh, that's been going on for years, but he's not upset. He was upset over the years. The neighborhood association got on him. No, I'm not doing it. But now,
I stopped down there and thanked him too.
yeah,
He was
got
very
everything
appreciative,
done.
too.
And I mean, we living, and that everybody feels so good about there, so happy, and they love to see you come around there. I think that was great. You guys got a police car to put around in there, you know, showing them, and you communicate with them, you give them a chance, and that's good. And that's what we need, though. We need that kind of work out of, you know, that kind of communication skills that we're going. And we don't have a lot of people griping. They are trying to take care of their business or junk it. Get paid. Don't let him come get it. Get rid of it. You ain't got the money to fix it. Hey, I'll go get me some money. Oh, we can get money for it, Mr. Glenn? Yeah, I've been telling you that for years. But thank you so much, though. You're doing a good job, and I'm glad Mr. Tevin brought this up. You know, I know it took a little while to get this all together, and you got your report together. It's a great report. And I know Ms. Miles asked some questions, some good questions here. And we got a little, you know, like you say, cars ain't around again on the alleys. I can go to some of the alleys that I've never seen. I seen cars around, now they gone. And that's good, because they know you coming around and you part-time. The public knows that you part-time there. You're not a full-time officer doing this. So you're getting a lot of work done compared to that. And I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Mr. McLean?
Officer Hamel, you know, one of the best things that you do out there is communication. You talk to these people on their level, and you treat them with respect and compassion. You know, it's very important when you deal with the public. And you've learned that through your years as a police officer, and I think you do a great job with this. And with this report, I'd like you to break it down just a little bit more and tell us which ones didn't have hubcaps.
I'll work on that, sir.
Buy lunch for Randy Coley.
That's good.
And I want to dispel the myth right now that I am not part of the REACT group.
Oh, okay.
Because they see me drive around my car with the yellow lights.
Yeah, you're React.
And I'm called REACT. They're great guys. They do a great job. No, I'm not part of them.
Thank you for what you do.
Any other questions? I just have one comment. You're doing a good job, and we do appreciate it. And Randy Coley told me to give you a hard time since you were speaking tonight.
I appreciate that, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And by the way, if you guys have any questions or any complaints from your citizens about cars,
We're not firing you.
Call
We're not doing it.
call the office and leave a message with the secretary, and she'll get the report to me, and I'll investigate it.
Fine.
All right.
Thank you. Ordinances 224-14.
Amending the 2014 annual budget.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I move that ordinance 224-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 224-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 224-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 225-14.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for the purchase of an exchange server and exchange licensing.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I move that ordinance 225-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 225-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 225-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 226-14.
Amending ordinance 143-13.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that ordinance 226-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 226-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 226-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 227-14.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Lima Locos baseball team.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that ordinance number 227 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 227-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe?
with this agreement, I know the city has been maintaining the field. Is there anything where they're going to help, maybe with the cost of that labor from the revenue that they're generating from the games?
Mr. President?
Mr. Stolly?
I mean, the reason I'm asking because it's for 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, they can give something.
They have been giving, and there's quite a list of what that partnership's about. I'd be happy to share with you. I don't have it with me tonight, Mr. Lowe, but they are committed to not only maintenance of the field, but some of the capital improvement projects that are going to go on over there that we've mentioned. So we're looking forward to that 10-year partnership, and as we stated when we began this relationship 7 years ago now, we are investing, they're investing, and we think it's a terrific opportunity for people to get involved with recreation, particularly in baseball, with the community and those not only in the community but those outside the community coming in too. So, yes, to answer your question, yes, we are.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Sure.
Mr.
Thank
President,
Mr. Glenn?
I just want to echo a small, you can go, I'm
Go,
just going to
sir.
say something. Yeah, but first of all, this is a very win-win situation for us in the Sixth Ward area. They had did a lot of work in that community like Mr. Stolly said, that they are involved in getting things together there. And I'm looking at some things that I want to do with the young kids in there, getting involved with the R&B organization. You know, just like the Little League, Chicago League came through, you know, get more kids interested in baseball. And so we can, you know, we can build our Division II school up a little bit more. And like Lima Senior, you don't have that many kids going out. Baseball's not a real good interest in there. But we're going to try to figure out to bring more kids into baseball, you know, and we got a couple neighborhood associations getting together now that we're gonna have a day that we're gonna bring kids out there. That they always run clinics. They have some clinics for the kids to come out. They do a lot of work on the fields. I mean, you can go out there and see the things do. Then Mr. Stolley do got some things there to show how they bring the partnership in. But I'm very happy with this 10 years that they're gonna be there. So that'd be a great commitment that we can see some good baseball and the crowds there. It just excite me. You know, the American Legion very excited about it too. And the peoples in the neighborhood, no one never complain about anything in that area. They always say everything's going good, Mr. Glenn, when I go around, walk around there and check things out, and they never had no bad response at all. They always have great response. They're glad the league is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 227 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 228-14.
Amending ordinance 5114.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that ordinance 228-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 228-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 228-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 229-14.
Authorizing the mayor to grant an easement to AEP.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that ordinance number 229-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 229-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 229-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 230-14.
Authorizing the mayor to accept and administer funds from the U.S. Department of Justice COPS hiring grant.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon.
I move that ordinance 230-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second?
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 230-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 230-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 231-14.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Ellis Door and Window.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon.
I move that ordinance 231-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 231-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 231-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 232-14.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Armor Fire Protection, Inc.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon.
I move that ordinance 232-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 232-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 232-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 233-14.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Warren Fire Equipment.
Mr. President,
Mr. Gordon.
I move that ordinance 233-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second?
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 233-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 233-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 234-14.
Amending section 1040.16 of the codified ordinances of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that ordinance 234-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 234-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 234-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Under miscellaneous business, we will start with Mr. Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple years, I think we're on our second year now. We, as council, requested that LACNEP, being that they are using the building for services, that they were to make a report in the month of October at the first council meeting. Last year, I think we went to the end of December. I'm just putting a reminder out there that it needs to be done, and please stay with your agreement. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Mr. Tevin.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Tevin. Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to refer to the Finance Committee the issue of looking at the 2.5% pay increase of the administration.
Second.
Second.
I thought that was right.
No, the one that was referred before was for elected officials.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was,
So the issue is to refer the issue of the 2.5% increase for administrators to
The Finance Committee.
Okay. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
I'd just like to make an announcement. Hope Neighborhood will be having their meeting tomorrow night, October 7th, at Unity at 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Glenn?
yes, got a couple of things here. First, I want to refer to Public Works about the hole in the street and Mr. Lowe appeal. We'll send it to Public Works Committee.
Motion and second is to refer the issue raised by
Mr. Lowe.
Mr. Lowe Senior to the Public Works Committee for review. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
if the motion passes, I would ask that the information be given to the committee members. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you. And second of all, on this month, last month in September, and I appreciate all the companies that hire people. 9 people got hired. Thank you guys so much. This all around the county, and they gave these guys some opportunity, and I just praise these guys so much, and they appreciate it. And second of all, I want and hope that we have some good news on Main Street. I had an opportunity. I just got back from Kentucky. I was on my way back. I'm looking at some things, meet with a company that we can do some things on Main Street. I talked to Miss Amy Odom about it, and we hope and pray that we get this done in the area. So a lot of good things I want to try to put down there. We're trying to bring it back, and Kibby Corner going to work on some things, and I've been seeking around trying to get some companies involved down there. So we can see, I know a lot of folks waiting on the gas station, and we hope and pray that get through, and some of the things they want to do, the drugstores and all that, because we got 2 other areas in that area there. So I think that'd be a great place to put at, in that area there. So that's something we're working on right now. Also, I'd like to thank Martin Luther King Neighborhood Association. They had a memorial service for Miss Franklin, and was murdered a long time ago there in the area. I didn't get to it because I had to leave for Kentucky Saturday. So I'd like to thank them guys for putting it all together. And I know the family was very, very, very happy about it. And I know the guy going up for parole, and we are working on what we're going to petition that, and his parole there. That we hope that he don't get out for the heinous crime he had done to her. And so they did a good job, and the family was so happy that someone recognized her for being, being murdered there in that area there, and they still care. So thank you guys so much. Also, next Monday, we'll be announcing our sixth word person of the month. We didn't give them last 3 months, we didn't give one out because everybody had to take a break. And now they all back working again. And so we're gonna be doing that next Monday. Also, we have a meeting tomorrow about the signs in different downtown areas. So, and I appreciate Sally getting all the paperwork for me because I went around passing them out to everybody, went downtown passing them out to everyone so they can be there. So no one said that nobody never told us anything. So I got everybody in the area. If I miss, and I know I didn't miss no one. So I spent a couple hours getting everybody passed out to them so they can be here tomorrow, and so we can hear what they have to say on that. And that meeting's tomorrow here in the chamber.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean Wednesday, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my calendar wrong. Wednesday, August the 8th, I'm moving ahead of myself a little bit.
Circled
I got it circled right on there. Thank you, Ms. Adams. She's on the committee there. When she said something about her neighborhood meeting, I'm thinking like, she got to be at both places at the same time. But it's Wednesday, I'm sorry, but every company, every organization downtown, I made sure you got a notice on it. So please try to attend so we can hear your thoughts and your ideas so we all can make a good decision what we need to do downtown about signs on the building. And also, I'd like to thank, he don't never like to be thanked for anything, but I won't call him out that much, but he donates so much stuff to us the other day when we got and cleaned some of them alleys out, and Officer Hammond got some of the cars out. So we went in there and someone had thrown furniture out. And I'm telling you now, guys, if I see you, anytime you dumping stuff in these alleys, and you'll get in trouble. That's a fine, and people are going to take your tag number down because we're not getting paid to do this. These volunteers coming out doing this, we had to clean it up, and I have to pay for the dump. And that's a little bit of steep there, guys. So please stop doing that. You do somebody rough, please don't throw it in the alley. People live in these areas; they don't want that. They want their property to look nice, and please stop. And if you just continue, every time we clean up, it's somebody dumping back in the alley again. And that's a lot of work. We spend our whole weekend, it took us Saturday and Sunday to clean one alley up, and it's cost us. And we just can't continue doing that, guys. If you need to use the water bill, you can use the water bill and dump it. It allows you to do it, guys. Go out and do it that way. But take a job, charge them the money, you're doing the job. Don't go and do it in the city, throw it in the city, or don't take it out in Perry Township. Don't do that either, because I hear some of the people in Perry complaining about that you guys throwing stuff out there. That's not good at all. And and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Mrs. Miles.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say congratulations to Lima Senior High's football team for a great win on Friday night and for making history as going 6-0. So go Spartans. The Westgate Neighborhood Association meeting will be October 19th at 6:30 p.m. Held at Chamberlain Huckabee Funeral Home, and the speaker will be Mr. Dave Huckabee himself. So everybody's invited to the Westgate Neighborhood Association meeting. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Miles. Mr. Gordon?
Thank you, Mr. President. Some of you are aware that I'm a football coach with the Lima Warriors, and I've been a football coach at that level about 10 years. The 10 years prior to that, I coached with a team called the Lima Steelers. And over the last year and a half, the team, the Lima Steelers, have lost 4 of our children. We've lost them to an automobile accident, to 2 murders, and 1 to suicide with the overtones of domestic violence. I say all this. Number one is I think that officials of this city, it'd be a good idea for us to get involved in helping with issues like domestic violence. But and secondly, to let people know that the Lima Warriors charities and myself are going to make it a part of our mission to help with educating the community on the subject of drug abuse, teen pregnancy, domestic violence, suicide prevention. So any organizations that are able to hear this, if you need any assistance from the Lima Warriors or myself as the First Ward City Councilman, you're welcome to contact me because I think it's an important issue. And then second of all, to remind people, we're going to have a safety services meeting at 5:30 on Wednesday, reminding people. And then the last thing, as I always say, is remind people to be good to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Mr. McLean?
I only have one item this evening. You know, I guess Jesse kind of reminded me when he talked about reports. We haven't seen a report from our temporary workers in the city in quite some time. We're supposed to be getting those on a regular basis. I'd like to see that. Other than that, I have nothing to see.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. I've got two things. Number one, just a reminder, there is a council of the whole meeting next Monday, the 13th at 6 p.m. We will continue our discussion on the appointment of a public official, that being the Civil Service Board appointment to replace the soon resigning Reverend Lamont Monfort. The other item I have is, since we are officially into the month of October, Mr. Stolle, could you give us an update? I think you said it once several months ago when we were still basking in warmth and sunshine and everything else, but when is the Halloween trick-or-treat night?
Mr. President, thanks for asking. We are starting to get calls. We got it out on our webpage this afternoon, and also it's going to go on the sign out front here this week. Also our Facebook page. But that day, if you remember, I think it was Mr. Tebben that asked us to pull this together about 5 years ago, and we worked with the outlining townships for trying to get everything together. And that date is always going to be the last Thursday of the month. So this year, I think that translates to October 30th, and we're all trying to get it in that time frame of 6 to 8 p.m. So for those paying attention, it's always, well, it's the last Thursday of the month, and this year it's October 30th.
All right.
Let's hope for a little better weather than we had last year.
Well, I don't know. Amy wants cold weather to knock down the weeds. I mean, come on.
Well, the weather we had last year was cold and wet,
No, we want to.
which causes weeds to grow, I think.
I'm just saying.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. There's nothing further, we need to adjourn into executive session.
Mr. President, if I could, before we adjourn, there is one thing I would like to mention. I was looking at the calendar, and we won't meet again until this will have occurred. A member of our community, John Venturella, is having a kidney transplant. And when Mr. Gordon talks about be good to each other, the donor, it happens to be a classmate of his and lives in the 4th Ward, Pat Black. I went to an event the other night in support of both of them, and they're really, it was so neat to see people that excited. John is so thankful, and Pat is so generous. It just really is heartwarming to see, and I'd ask that you all keep both of them in your prayers. The surgery is October 15th at 9 o'clock in the morning in Cincinnati. Mr. President, I move that Lima City Council adjourn into executive session for purposes of discussing litigation.
Second.
The motion and the second is for City Council to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing litigation. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Miss Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
That motion passed 8-0. We're in executive session. 5 minutes.
Yeah.